Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the preamble before the video actually starts. To give you some context, this is the first ever video that I recorded and made, so it's very light on editing, and I'm going to edit some more images in there just to give you more context for things, as well as maybe changing out the thumbnail a little bit. And also keep in mind that I didn't really have like a set, like serious narration style yet, so this one's more of a casual sort of like radio host or surfer dude sort of narration style. And yeah, that's really all the important stuff. Also, sorry for the little like uh, view bar or whatever it's called, like the little UI bar being visible in the bottom at the beginning and the end. I had to screen record this off of my Rumble because I lost the original source file for it, and I felt like this narration was just. I felt like I did good enough for this narration to not have to remake it. I didn't feel like it was necessary necessarily necessary to be remade. Anyway, well, I hope you understand, and yeah, I hope you enjoy the story.
If you are hunting trouble, lad, you found it.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. In this episode of Haunted Gaming R, today I'll be reading you a creepypasta about Wolfenstein 3D in a summary style. So grab your stall helms, suspend your disbelief, and let's march on to Wolfenstein 3D.KKR. The story begins as our author explains. On June 14, 2005, he had discovered what was beyond any doubt in his mind the most horrific and absurd thing that ever happened to him. He accidentally stumbled upon some sort of secret ending hidden within the files of Wolfenstein 3D. But as it actually turns out, it was more than just a simple ending. The author claims it's been 2 years, and if he can recall correctly, he was trying to figure out how to make reskins or retextures of enemies, the guard dog specifically. Basically, really amateur stuff at that point, just trying to get a hold of modifying and editing sprites correctly. He truly didn't have any clue about how he stumbled onto it. He remembered it was getting late, past 1 a.m. He had tons of different programs, some for modding sprites, some for extracting and converting files. Even though he was extremely tired, but didn't feel like giving up on editing for the night just yet, he decided to rest his head on his desk, laying it down, accidentally dropping his hands onto the keyboard in the process. And that's what set it off. He heard a few abnormal beeps cut through his headset. He looked up, and behold, there was a folder extracting to his desktop with the name E6M11, which was odd considering the last level of the game normally was Mission 10 and not Mission 11. He opened the folder and saw hundreds upon hundreds of files. He had no idea how it happened. At first, he thought the file might have copied itself over and over again, but after reviewing some of the files, he noticed each file had its own unique 10-digit code. He also had no idea what the file type was, as they weren't any he had knew of before and even now, the file extension being .KKR. By now, he was a bit worried he might have damaged or even corrupted some of his files, or that he might have gotten a virus somehow. So he ran his antivirus, which he didn't expect anything suspicious, until it picked up a single potential threat from the folder he had just extracted. He was a second away from clicking the remove button, but a spark of curiosity filled him, so he just had to check it out. Going into it, it led him into an IFC file, which was a file type he actually recognized. After clicking it, Windows completely blacked out. He had thought he had bricked his computer or a virus was actually affecting it, but instead it loaded into the Wolfenstein 3D main menu. Except everything seemed different, slightly darker, with background music playing slightly more menacing. Instead of a gun pointing out the options, it was now a plain black arrow. There was 3 options on the menu: New Game, Options, and Die. The last one seemed a bit too serious and morbid to be a joke by id Software. He felt very uneasy looking at the Die option. Every time he moved the arrow down the menu, he could feel a chill down his spine, like something was not quite right about it. So he selected the New Game button, although there was only one difficulty titled Please Kill Me, which was unlike any difficulty selectable in the normal game. Again, it seemed too serious to be taken as a normal early game id Software joke. He proceeded to select the option, and it started up. Instead of the normal "Get Psyched" message on the loading screen, it was just the load bar on a plain black background. Loading into the level itself, the player started with just the knife, not the handgun as usual. The player appeared to be in a large open field at nighttime. At first he thought, oh cool, maybe it's like a stealth mission. He wandered around in the field for a few minutes, finding nothing but dark green grass and a pitch black sky above. The distance seemed to taunt him, as it showed the edge of the map, hardly even visible. A thin line of brush being visible with some twinkling lights behind it. They seemed just like stars, way off in the distance. After a short time more of wandering around, the player was about to exit the game, thinking the level was just unfinished. Maybe something the developers had left in the game by accident and forgotten to delete. But when he went to the menu, he felt a chill go down his spine as he saw that Die option. He exited the menu, getting back into the game, wandering around the map some more, and as he did, he saw an orange light in the distance. Following the light, he eventually ended up coming to what looked like a house. What worried him, however, is that this shouldn't be possible in the Intech 1 engine used for Wolfenstein 3D. There shouldn't be 2 levels, 2 floors stacked on top of each other like that. In fact, it was impossible according to the player. He knew something was up, but he kept going out of curiosity. Stepping into the structure, which appeared to be a 2-story log cabin, there at first didn't seem to be much inside of it. It was about 6 by 6 squares in size, according to the player, with an extra space for the fireplace. The floor was textured to look wooden with a carpet in the center of it. Off to the side was a staircase, which apparently wasn't possible for the engine, according to the player. The stairs had a foreboding look to them, and the fireplace looped an animation of fire crackling, which somehow dynamically lit up the room, despite the engine limitations. The fire made everything seem calm but eerie at the same time. Ignoring his bitter judgment, the player went upstairs and the screen began glitching out a bit. When he reached the top, everything had returned to normal. On the second floor, there were 2 different doors visible. One looked very generic and wooden. However, the other had a very strange design on it. The door itself was black with what looked like the Nazi black sun symbol on it, but with only 3 of the lines connected to the outer circle instead of however many it should normally have. He decided to be cautious and entered the wooden door first. It made a creaking sound as he slowly entered, actually swinging open in real time, the player being perplexed on how advanced this was for the id 1 engine. The room he entered was dark, with only one light being in the center of it, all the corners of the room being basically pitch black. Naturally, he went into the center. For a few seconds, the player stood there, seeing if anything would happen, but nothing did. He turned around and nearly had a heart attack, as there was a lone guard standing there. He looked really thin and pale, standing there hunched in his uniform. As he blocked the way, the player simply stabbed him once, and he crumbled into a pile of what looked like white dust or ash. The action of the animation being so smooth, it didn't seem possible for the engine at all. He described it as almost unbelievable if he didn't see it himself. Astonished, he carefully moved into the next room, and through the black door with the odd symbol on it. Instead of the door opening normally, or swinging like the wooden one did. He had seemed to have been sucked into it like a black void, and before he even realized, he had been teleported into some sort of weird chamber or hallway. What he saw in there he described as beyond horrifying. It was lined with rows of actual pixelated images of Hitler from various historical photos. He continued further down the hallway, and the pictures started to get more gruesome as photos of casualties of World War II were mixed in. And even further down, there were disheveled pictures of Hitler performing violent acts while slowly looking more and more dead, or like a zombie. And they looked quite realistic despite being a low res, the author claimed. The author couldn't believe the game designers would add such a thing into the game, given that it adds nothing, and it's just there for shock value. The images got to a point where they were so gruesome and gory that the player had to force himself to not look at them. Finally, he reached the end of the long hallway, and he was just caught in his thoughts for a minute, wondering how they managed to program all of the things he had seen previously into the game in the first place. He came to a plain red door, with no decals or any textures on it. It was just a flat shade of red. Opening it, he came to a large black room with a horde of sprites of people, very detailed looking sprites, with blank white eyes and swastikas cut or printed onto their foreheads, lined up in rows, standing hunched over like zombies. Suddenly, he began hearing a chant rise from the horde. At first, the sound was indecipherable, but then it began to get louder and louder, and he could make out more and more of what they were chanting. The names of the developers of the original game. He tried stabbing some of the zombies, but they didn't seem to react. Trying to turn the sound volume down didn't do much, as the increasing sound of the horde's pixelated chants became almost deafening. He had had enough of this, and he took off his headphones, freeing himself from the chant that had evolved into screaming at this point. Going into the menu and selecting the die option to end this madness, he figured out the option didn't do anything at all, and he was still on the menu. Unpausing and getting back into the game, he proceeded to turn around and face the door again, almost like it was a scripted sequence in SS Guard that can only be described as having a bloody smile carved onto his face, being emaciated like the previous regular guard, with pale skin and thin. Walked in slowly, raised his gun, shooting the player, killing him instantly, leaving the player stuck on a completely red screen while the screams blasted through his headphones, somehow getting even louder. He tried to exit the game by alt-tabbing, Control-Alt-deleting, but nothing seemed to work. So he unplugged his computer, ending the madness, as his monitor faded to black and the sound from his headphones stopped. Sighing in relief afterwards, he pondered to himself what he had just played for a little bit before deciding to go to bed. In the morning, turning his computer back on, he found that the file and all the traces of it were gone, telling nobody about these events till writing it down. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Wolfenstein 3D.KKR, a very obscure Wolfenstein 3D creepypasta. Leave your thoughts about it in the comments, and request for other stories you'd like me to read, too. I might get to them sometime. Other than that, I'll see you all in the next episode of Haunted Gaming R.